Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome to our program on Kardec Radio. And now, here's our host, Dr. Vanessa Anceloni.
Dear listener, we are here to nourish your soul, and today it's a most special day because we are celebrating 150 years of the publishing of the Medium's book, a book that divides the history of humankind, and only when we study it we'll get to know the reasons why. Because Allan Kardec, in the Spirit's book, few years before the Medium's book was published, Allan Kardec discusses the point that mediumship is here for a very specific purpose. If we go read the question and answer 430 of the Spirit's book, the illuminated spirits explain to us that God has given mediumship to humankind for a useful and serious purpose. And this is the reason why we are promoting this show today. We need to understand that we have a very special faculty inside of us, mediumship. Much like our intelligence, it needs to be educated. People talk about development, but it's not quite the concept of what it is. It is actually education, because we're going to create new habits using a faculty of communicating between two different spheres. And in that regard, Allan Kardec was quite a pioneer because he coined the term medium for the purpose of somebody who is a messenger between two worlds. Mediumship as well, a coined term by Allan Kardec, and thus a book like this one, the Medium's book, as this manual that was given to humanity to open an opportunity to educate this faculty that if we know how to use it, we are going to expedite the progress of humankind. We're not here talking about using mediumship for fortune telling. We're talking about mediumship to really deepen our understanding about ourselves and life in general, to expedite the minimizing of the problems of our human fellows. That's what mediumship is all about. And when we go to this fascinating and very important book, the Medium's book, Allan Kardec brings it in two parts. First part, 4 chapters on preliminary observations. Chapters that very wisely begin with this question: are there spirits? And then the extraordinary and the supernatural, methodology and theories. And then the second part contains 32 chapters about spirit manifestations. It's so deep. He has done the research for ourselves. Kardec was this researcher of the beyond and quite an educator, because he not only researched, but he put together a body of knowledge about this faculty that belongs to humanity and to humankind and to the human profile, that if we use it, our lives are going to be better. And the lives of people in our lives are going to be better as well. Thus, it's very important to understand what are mediums, what is mediumship, and to understand the organic features of it. That's why we're bringing to the show Dr. Stanley Krippner. Dr. Krippner has been this pioneer mind in sciences. He's professor of psychology at Saybrook University in San Francisco. He's a fellow in the American Psychological Association and its past president of 2 divisions, 30 and 32. He's also former director of Kent State University Child Study Center in Ohio and of several different organizations. He is author of several different extraordinary books that talks about the human mind. He received a special award by the American Psychological Association for distinguished contributors to the international advancement of psychology. He has been a faculty at University Holística International in Brasília, Brazil, the Instituto de Medicina y Tecnología Avanzada de la Conducta in Ciudad Juárez, and he has given many lectures, workshops, seminars in different countries. He has been a great collaborator of spiritists around the world, especially Dr. Alexander Moreira from Brazil. And he has recently published a chapter in the book Spiritism and Mental Health by the editor Dr. Emma Bragdon, and talking about mediumship, spiritism, and its approach to healing the mind. We have a lot to talk to him, and we're going to share with you lots of great insights about mediumship and our gratitude to this fascinating book, the Medium's book, as its framework brings us new opportunity to understand mediumship and to use it usefully and purposefully. So to kickstart this show, we're going to screen to you this prayer of service by Emmanuel in the book Enlightening Messages, published by the Spiritist Society of Baltimore, that has also become a CD. And we'll be back with you, bringing to you the best to nourish your soul.
Omnipotent Love. At the distressful time of crisis in which circumstances took your soul into trial, many believed that you would no longer rise. However, when shadows thickened around you, you found the blinding light, which impelled you toward the path of hope bathed in sunlight. In the cell of disease, many admitted that nothing was left for you but to accept the scythe of death. However, at the extreme moments, intangible hands caressed the exhausted body, renewing its warmth, so that you would not leave incomplete the service that marks your presence on earth. In the midst of temptation, many agreed that decadence was all that was left for you. However, at the edge of the muddy cliff where you were, an invisible arm manifested itself, deterring you. In the valley in which you threw yourself without thinking, many despised you for good. Nevertheless, at the threshold of madness, you received inner support that guarded your heart, reconstructing your life. In the hut of loneliness, in which the most cherished relatives relegated you, many believed you to be forlorn. But at the end of your weeping, which appeared to be endless for you, you experienced an unexplainable uplift that encouraged you to seek new bonds which honored you. While in the midst of turmoil that envelops you during the day, think about God, the omnipotent love, which does not forsake us. No matter how great the affliction, He will bring a balm that consoles. No matter how obscure the problem, He will give a fair and correct solution. Even so, do not hasten in personifying or defining Him. The word of Christ is enough for us. He who revealed God is our Father. Above all, do not bother if someone denies God's existence, even if their words shine in the world, because you will find God within your heart in moments of pain. It is natural that it be like that. It is when the night comes that the eyes of humanity can devise the splendor of the stars.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Looking for a gift this holiday season? Look no further. The CD or the book Enlightening Messages brings back a true meaning of the holiday season. Buy your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org/bookstore.
Nourish your soul with Kardec Radio.
Kardec Radio, live every Saturday at 11 a.m.
On December 6th, Strand Releasing proudly releases on DVD the Brazilian blockbuster Astral City, A Spiritual Journey. Based on the best-selling book by medium Chico Xavier, the film tells the story of André Luiz, a successful doctor who experiences an enlightening spiritual awakening after his death. When he wakes up in the spiritual world, he embarks on a new journey of self-discovery and transformation. Buy your copy now. Contact us at www.strandreleasing.com.
The newest edition of the Medium's book by Allan Kardec is now available. Purchase your copy online or via your ebook reader. Simply go to www.ediciofamerica.com today.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Did you enjoy reading the classic story about Little Red Riding Hood? Then you'll love the spiritual spin on this classic tale. The Big Bad Wolf, reincarnated by Rock Jacinto, is a great way to share new perspectives to your children about spiritism and the law of action and reaction. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Join us every Thursday live, Evolution in Two Worlds, a journey of the soul through the teachings of the Spirit Doctor, André Luiz. Connect at www.tvcei.com, Channel 2.
And now we return to our program.
So, dear listener, we are here honored to have Dr. Stanley Krippner with us. As we've said, Dr. Stanley Krippner is a professor of psychology at Saybrook University at San Francisco, and he has held very important positions, especially with the American Psychological Association. In the past years, he received a very important award for distinguished contributions to the international advancement of psychology, and for us, we are so honored that he has been a great collaborator of spiritists and researchers such as Dr. Alexander Moreira in Brazil. He recently wrote a chapter in the book Spiritism and Mental Health, and we are honored to have him here with us celebrating this 150 years of the publishing of the Medium's book to talk to us about mediums, mediumship, neurobiology, and Allan Kardec. Dr. Krippner, thank you so much for being with us today at Kardec Radio.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you. So, Dr. Krippner, how did you get so interested in mediumship, mediums, and bringing research and your observations into this realm of the human life?
Well, actually, I learned about Allan Kardec many years ago, and I attended a session at a very, very large temple in Brazil, which is run by the Kardec group in Sao Paulo.
Mm.
And I was very impressed by the sincerity of the mediums and the good work that they were doing there, especially for poor and underprivileged people. And this, of course, is right into the tradition of Allan Kardec himself, because he taught free courses for the underprivileged when he was a teacher in Paris, France. So I have been able to follow up this interest on each of my trips to Brazil, and in so doing, along the way, I met the people who you just mentioned, Dr. Ella Brangden and Dr. Alexander Moreira, both of whom have edited outstanding books on the topic of mediumship with an emphasis on the Kardec tradition in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. And in itself, with your long-standing interest in the human mind, where did mediumship, your interest on mediumship specifically, get in the way?
Mediumship has actually been a topic in psychical research and parapsychology since it was founded back in the late 1880s. And it's interesting that the British Society for Psychical Research put mediumship on its list of topics that it was going to explore, such topics as out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences and hypnotism and multiple personality. Well, just about everything on their list is now gone into mainstream psychology and psychiatry except for mediumship and parapsychology. Those are still rejected or ignored by most mainstream psychotherapists and social scientists in the West.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, I think that it's important that attention be paid and that some solid research be done. My students and I have done electroencephalographic and other psychophysiological monitoring of mediums, both in Brazil, in the United States, and also in South Korea. And we have found that they do have very, very interesting changes in their brain while they are incorporating the spirits, while they are doing their mediumship work.
Mm. Would you say that the pattern of their brain waves are similar to anything seen in pathological states?
No, not exactly. It's interesting that the American mediums that we've studied and the Brazilian mediums that we have studied do show very, very similar patterns in terms of the brain waves becoming slower, in terms of the body reactions becoming faster. This is sort of a paradox because on the one hand they're slowing down and on the other hand they're speeding up. And that's what makes this particular state of mind so difficult to fake. Of course, many people think that the mediums that we have studied are frauds, but I would ask, how can a fraud produce the very unique combination of very slow brain waves in the brain, but rather fast heartbeat rates and respiration, breathing rates, and also sometimes a great deal of sweat on the fingertips, and it just does not match anything that we ordinarily get when people are awake.
So when you talk about the body changes, you're talking about sympathetic changes?
Yes, we are, and that's just one half of the picture. Also, the mental content changes because we not only study what we can measure with these physiological devices, but we want to know what the experience the mediums are having. And many of the mediums really don't remember much of anything when they have finished their work, but others do remember, and they do talk about feeling like they're providing an opening for other intelligences, other entities, other agencies to speak through them, especially if there is some need. They're not going to do it just for fun or even not to help us scientifically. But if we can combine our scientific work with consoling people who are bereaved or grieving through the loss of a loved one, then that's something that they will gladly do because they see that as their purpose. To help people realize that death on this earthly plane is not permanent death, and there are other worlds that they can flourish in and grow in and inhabit.
Yeah.
And maybe sometime return to Earth in a different body.
So does it also mean that your data possibly talk about different patterns for different types of mediumship? Were you able to study phenomena of automatic writing and the EEG of mediums during that time versus those who are, as we call, in trance of incorporation?
Yes, I think that we really haven't done enough work on that to make a definitive statement. So you're talking about the people who do the writing. That's very hard to measure because once they start to write or type or use a computer, then this disrupts the psychophysiological measurements. It certainly interrupts the brain waves, and so we have to wait until we get more sophisticated material to do this. And of course, this is important. Many people who are listening to your show are probably too young to remember the famous case of Patience Worth. And between the Second World War and the First World War, this was quite remarkable. A housewife by the name of Pearl Curran was using a Ouija board just for fun. And suddenly, and you probably know the story, and suddenly the words came out, Patience Worth my name, many moons ago I lived. And over the course of the next few years, this Patience Worth, who supposedly lived back in the days of the Pilgrims, came up with poems and essays, short stories, and even novels. And Pearl Curran just, first of all with the Ouija board, and then later through dictation on a typewriter, just took this information down as rapidly as she could. The interesting thing is that these stories were pretty good literary products, even though Pearl Curran didn't have any background in English literature. And one of the novels, A Sorry Tale, was taking place back in the days of Christ, and the archaeological details, the historical details, were quite accurate. One of Patience Worth's books actually won a literary award in New York City, and they wanted her to be there personally to pick it up. So, of course, this provided a dilemma for Pearl Curran, and she sent a note back signing Patience Worth's name, saying that she was otherwise occupied and would not be able to attend the ceremony, which was a little bit of humor. And then, of course, eventually the news came out that Pearl Curran did not live in this time, in this day and age, and then that attracted even more information. And there's been actually 3 different books written about this case, many, many articles. There are other cases too, but this one is one of the most interesting and most dramatic, especially once you were talking about the people who are doing work with the with writing and the difficulties that we have getting a good assessment of them with our physiological machinery.
I see. So, Dr. Krippner, at our introduction, we're quoting a passage from the Spirit's book in the answer to Kardec's question 430, when the illuminated spirits at his time mentioned that mediumship was given to us for a serious and useful purpose. And going to the medium's book, Kardec refers to medium and defines it as somebody who feels this influence of the spirits. How would you define medium? What is to be a medium?
Well, I would go back to the English word medium. Medium is something in between. And so the medium connects this world with another world and connects a person from the other world with people in this world. So a medium mediates, makes the connection. And, you know, I think the best example of Allan Kardec's goal was probably the Brazilian medium Chico Xavier, who was even more prolific than Pearl Curran. He wrote in many different styles from many different spirits, literally wrote hundreds of books and essays and plays, and they've been translated into many languages. And each of these was from a different set of authors. Again, there has been a very, very good recent book about Chico Xavier, and the author is Guy Lyon Playfair. Some of your audience members might be like to look that up. He was really one of the most remarkable men of the 20th century, and really much more needs to be known about him, not only because of interest in mediums, but because of the great potentials of the human mind and what it can do.
Yes, you're right.
Now, I should say something about Allan Kardec himself, because, again, some of your readers might not know the hard work he did. He literally interviewed hundreds of mediums and then distilled what he had found in half a dozen different books. And nobody has done a job as mammoth as that and as well as that since the days of Kardec working in France on this project.
Mm-hmm. So you were quite impressed with the work Kardec did at the time.
Oh, yes, I've read all of these books, and I think there's not only an interest in mediumship in these books, but he also did his version of the Christian Gospels, and so there's a theological aspect of what he did.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Krippner, we are going to go to a very short break.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Enjoy this new release. Reborn for Love by the renowned Brazilian scientist and researcher on reincarnation, Dr. Hernani Andrade. This novel describes one of the most extraordinary and genuine cases of reincarnation ever studied by Dr. Andrade's Brazilian Institute of Psychobiophysics Research in Sao Paulo State. Order your copy now at roundtable.uk@gmail.com or at www.roundtablepublishing-uk.com.
Spiritist Network, your gateway to on-demand Spiritist videos. www.spiritistnetwork.com.
Spread the word. Kardec Radio, to learn more about Spiritism.
Want to find a good way to explain life after physical death to kids or teenagers? Check out the book Message from a Teen in the Spirit World by the Spirit Neo Lucio and Psychograph by Chico Xavier. In this book, a teenager named Carlos explains his impressions on the new life in the spirit realm with his discarnate relatives and new friends. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
The Spiritist Magazine is a trimestral digital periodical that publishes the latest news on the Spiritist thought and the movement in the USA and worldwide. Subscribe now at www.spiritistmagazine.com.
In the book, A Primer on Being Good by the Spirit Maymay, psychographed by the medium Chico Xavier, explains in simple language appropriate for children two paths in life, the path of good or the path of evil. God has granted us the freedom to choose either one. Purchase your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org.
Now we return to our program.
I would like to screen to all of us and our listeners a case that he studied through a medium of a spirit that communicated and had a very peculiar name, Exhumine. It's from the book Heaven and Hell, one of the spirit cases that he published that illustrates one of the facets and the purposes of mediumship. We'd like us to hear to that case that is narrated now and get back to you to get some comments from you. Is that okay?
Fine, sure it is.
All right, thank you. So let us listen to this now.
A case from the book Heaven and Hell, Chapter 7, Exhumé, Bordeaux, 1862. A spirit used this name in presenting itself spontaneously to the medium, who was accustomed to this type of manifestation because her mission seemed to be entail assisting lower-order spirits brought to her by her spirit guide with a twofold objective of aiding her instruction and their advancement. How are you? Is this a woman's name or a man's name?
A man's. A man who is unhappy as can be. I am suffering all the torments of hell.
But if there is no hell, how can you suffer its torments?
A pointless question.
I understand, but others might need an explanation.
That doesn't concern me.
Might selfishness be the one of the causes of your suffering?
Maybe.
If you desire relief, you must start by repudiating your bad inclinations.
Don't worry about it. It's none of your business. Start by praying for me as you would do for the others, and then we shall see.
If you don't help me out by repenting, prayer will have little effect.
If you talk instead of praying, you won't help me advance very much.
So do you really want to evolve?
Maybe, I don't know. Let's see if prayer relieves my suffering. That's the essential thing.
Then join me with a strong desire of obtaining new relief.
Go ahead.
After the medium's prayer, do you feel satisfied?
Not like I had wanted.
Medicine, administered for the first time, can immediately cure a long-standing malady.
Perhaps not.
Would you like to come back?
Yes, if you call me.
The Medium's Guide. Daughter, you will have much work ahead of you with this heart and spirit, but there will be hardly any merit in saving those who are not lost. Courage. Preserve and you will succeed. No one is so guilty that he cannot be amended by the means of persuasion and example, since even the most preserved spirits end up amending themselves with time. If one does not succeed immediately in leading them back to good sentiments, which is often impossible, one's efforts will not be lost. The thought one kindles in them stirs them up and makes them reflect despite themselves. These are the seeds that sooner or later will bring forth fruit. One does not break a rock with the first strike of the hammer. What I'm telling you, my daughter, also applies to incarnate, and you must understand why Spiritism, even among firm believers, does not make perfect human beings immediately. Belief is the first step. Faith comes next, and transformation will have its turn. But many will be necessary to go to the spirit world to renew themselves.
So, dear listener, here we have it. One of the examples that we brought to you about cases of the afterlife studied by Allan Kardec, published in the book Heaven and Hell, one of the books that he published at his time, that illustrate the purposes of mediumship. Dr. Krippner, here they talk about the use of mediumship, and this medium, in a very particular case, receives a guidance from her mentor about the need to assist lower order spirits, what we call this obsession in Spiritism today. Talking about mediumship and its purposes, in your studies, what have you concluded that it is for?
I think that the goal that you hear over and over again is educational in nature, that the spirits are trying to teach people on earth not to be afraid of death, because this is just one step in their passage. And you know, when I was in Paris, I went to the Père Lachaise cemetery where Kardec is buried, and it's a beautiful tomb, and inscribed on the tomb, which is in the form of a garden, it says, to be born again, die, again be reborn, and so progress unceasingly, such is the law. Well, this is the message that Kardec was trying to get out into the world by all of his various studies. And I got echoes of that from the interview that you just presented for us.
Exactly. So do you think the way that Spiritism proposes a framework for mediumship is very different from what you see elsewhere?
Well, I think it's much more sophisticated, because Kardec was quite an intellectual, and he provided a vehicle through which mediums could be studied. Of course, he thought that what he called Spiritism was actually a science, and this is why I think you have so many well-educated people in Brazil and the United States and elsewhere interested in the work of Kardec, because it does give them a focus, it does give them a direction. Inspired by Kardec, who, after all, lived in the middle of the 19th century, back in the 1800s, and I think that his influence, if anything, has actually been growing over the years. I hear much more about him now than when I first heard about him some 40 years ago.
So, as you're talking about Allan Kardec, and this year we're celebrating this 150 years of the publishing of the Medium's book, from your scholarly view as an investigator of the human mind, the different features of the psychic exercise of the human mind and mediumship in itself, when you talk about the Medium's book, what would be the main purpose of this book if somebody is willing to work seriously in their mediumship?
Well, I think that my approach to this might be different than that of many other people. To me, the book is so remarkable because it's a piece of scholarship. I mean, after all, Allan Kardec took years to interview mediums, and then he noted different points on which the mediums all were saying about the same thing. And he pulled those together into the Medium's book, which is a very good example of what we might call the phenomenology of mediumship. And it really covers the waterfront in terms of what the medium does, how the medium gains contact with the entity in the other world, what the medium tries to do in terms of, shall we say, alleviating sorrow and suffering from the people left behind when a loved one dies. I'll tell you an interesting story along those lines. I was in Brazil once, and we were with a group of people who were interested in studying mediums. And one woman had lost her son in a very tragic automobile accident. He was quite young when he died, and she had been paying a lot of money to a medium in England who would send her tapes back every month of the communication with her dead son. And she went to this Kardec medium upon the roof of the hotel where we were staying, where it was nice and quiet. And the Kardec Brazilian medium got in touch with the son, and the son was saying, "Please tell your mother not to pester me. I'm trying to get on with my own development, and she has this woman in England contact me asking me questions, and then she charges my mother hundreds of dollars for it. I don't need that. My mother doesn't need that. Just let me do my own thing." And as this information was coming through, a shooting star came right through the sky. And we thought, well, that shows that this is really good advice. This is really sincere. And so that sort of ended the mother's grief, and she never had to send out hundreds of dollars a month for communications to her son from that point on. And her son was happy because he had work to do before his next incarnation. And so that one episode with the medium in Brazil really brought sort of a closure to this whole search that had been going on.
Quite a story, and it reminds me of this purpose of mediumship to help and assist those who are caught up in these wandering earthbound spirits. And Kardec says they are going to reincarnate better after going through this experience of communicating through a medium. You agree with that?
Oh, yes, that makes sense to me.
And in your book, Mysterious Minds, when you talk about the neurobiology of psychics, mediums, and other extraordinary people, you, besides some of the experiments that you were mentioning to us, would you say also that in this understanding of mediumship and its neurobiology, Kardec mentions that the communication goes mind to mind from the incarnate medium to the discarnate medium, but it requires a combination of things through the spiritual body, the perispirit. Would you also bring this hypothesis that there must be a spiritual body in order for this phenomena of mediumship to happen?
Well, I think, sure, that certainly makes a great deal of sense. And I'm glad that you mentioned our book, Mysterious Minds. A friend of mine and I edited that book, and we have several authors in the book, and one of them is our friend Alexander from Brazil, who co-authored a splendid article in which we compare Brazilian mediums and American mediums and Korean mediums, and put it all within a neurobiological framework, probably for the first time. So this is one of the gifts that mediums are giving us today, an opportunity to do some basic neuroscientific studies that are yielding a great deal of useful information and making more and more people taking this topic seriously. You know that there is something going on here. We might not understand fully and completely what it is, but it is something that can be investigated and something can be applied. I think of all the people over the years I've known who have gone to mediums and their grief has come to an end, their suffering has come to an end, the sorrow has come to the end, because they have been reassured that their loved one is in a good place, is in continuing to grow and to develop.
Exactly. And in your book, Mysterious Minds, with these several very different, interesting cases, you discuss also about the fact that, many people nowadays, they don't take it seriously because of fraudulent mediumship. And you offer cases in this book about frauds, just so we distinguish the serious ones from the ones that are fraudulent. So in that regard, it reminds me much of Allan Kardec's research in the Medium's book, when he talks about conditions for serious mediumship to happen. And he even talks about, in chapter 29 of the Medium's book, about the difference of serious meetings from meetings that are there just for curiosity. So what would be your take about the most important conditions for mediums to align themselves seriously to produce useful phenomena that will help themselves and other people as well?
Oh, yes, I think alignment is very important, and I think that this is something you don't get into just for fun or just for thrills. It's a serious matter. And then, of course, we do have some so-called entities from the so-called spirit world who are not very far along in their development, and I've dealt with them too. Some of them refuse to admit that they're dead, and so they latch on to a living person and drain that person of his or her energy. And this is where a medium can come in and sort of intercede and break the grip that the entity has on the living person, and sort of persuade them to leave and send them off to pursue their own development. So not all of the entities that mediums are in touch with are wise or benevolent. Like I always say, just because you're dead doesn't mean you're smart. Just because you're dead doesn't mean you're good.
That's a good one.
Yeah, there's all levels of development, sure.
Exactly. Dr. Krippner, we're going to give a very short break and be right back with you to ask you more questions. We have listeners who send their questions to us and are willing to know more about your studies.
We will return to our program after these messages.
Looking for a gift this holiday season? Look no further. The CD or the book Enlightening Messages brings back a true meaning of the holiday season. Buy your copy online at www.ssbaltimore.org/bookstore.
On December 6th, Strand Releasing proudly releases on DVD the Brazilian blockbuster Astral City, A Spiritual Journey. Based on the best-selling book by medium Chico Xavier, the film tells the story of André Luiz, a successful doctor who experiences an enlightening spiritual awakening after his death. Buy your copy now. Contact us at www.strandreleasing.com.
Nourish Your Soul with Kardec Radio.
Now in English, the book Action and Reaction by the Spirit André Luiz, psychographed by Chico Xavier. Buy your copy online or via your ebook reader. Go to www.ediceiofamerica.com today.
Save the date for the 6th U.S. Spiritist Symposium that will be held at the Rialto Center for the Arts at Georgia State University in Atlanta, Georgia on Saturday, May 12, 2012. This year's topic is Love and Enlightenment, a Pathway to Self-Healing. Come out and enrich your mind, body, and soul. For more info, go to www.spiritistsymposium.org.
And now we return to our program.
Dear listener, Kardec Radio is here to nourish your soul. There is much to share with you because many good things are happening around the world. And here is the reason why Kardec Radio is here, to share the good news, especially about this immortal part of all of us. We are mortal beings. We need to talk about life as a continuum. And good news, Kardec Radio is now in 53 countries. And in the United States alone, we have listeners in 47 states. If you know people in Wyoming, North Dakota, South Dakota, or Nebraska, let them know Kardec Radio is here, because these are the states we don't have listeners yet. And if you forward our emails, our website, kardecradio.com, to them, we are going to spread the good news throughout listeners of all states in the U.S. and in other countries as well. We are here today celebrating 150 years of the Medium's book, and we brought to the show one of the scholars, Dr. Stanley Krippner. He is a PhD, and he is also a former president of the American Psychological Association of two of its divisions, 30 and 32. He has received several awards. He has been a long-standing collaborator of Spiritist scholars, and recently he published a chapter in Dr. Bragdon's book, Spiritism and Mental Health. He has much to share with us. He has great insights besides his many great books he has published, and we're going to highlight this one that merges into the topic of the show today, Mysterious Minds, the Neurobiology of Psychics, Mediums, and Other Extraordinary People. You know, Allan Kardec, when he published the Medium's book, he talked about in chapter 6, he asked this question to the spirits of the time, and through the mediums, he got the answer about the purpose of spirits appearing with good intentions. And the answer was fascinating because it talks about to console those who are mourning their departure in order to prove to them that they continue to exist and are close by. They also might appear to give advice and sometimes to ask for assistance for themselves. So mediumship is here for a very serious and useful purpose. It's possible that using mediumship wisely, as Kardec proposes, we're going to expedite the progress of our planet Earth. Look at books such as Evolution into Worlds by the spirit doctor André Luiz. There we can find even future protocols for research in the different fields of sciences and expedite the investigation. So, Dr. Krippner, we are talking about this book, Mysterious Minds, that you published, and we have a listener that sent us an email recently, knowing that you would be here at Kardec Radio, asking questions about mediumship in America, because you talk about the popularity in this book about the X-Files, the show Medium, and here we have a different type of mediumship being displayed in America. Can you tell us more about it and your thoughts in that regard?
Well, of course, there's any number of people in the United States who call themselves mediums, and some of them are really not developed mediums at all, but they are developed in terms of show business. And they know how to do what we call a cold reading. They will tell a person that they're getting information from a loved one, and they will ask a number of very clever questions and get information from their client that then they will formulate into an answer so that the client thinks that they indeed are in communication with a loved one. For example, the medium might say, "Oh, I'm getting the letter G, and the person will say, "Oh yes, G, granddaughter, my poor dead granddaughter." Well, let's face it, which one of us doesn't know somebody or something with the letter G? And then, yes, your granddaughter, and this is what your granddaughter is telling us. Let me see. Your granddaughter was doing something very interesting. She said, "Oh, yes, my granddaughter was building a dollhouse." Yes, the granddaughter is telling me that she was taking such pride in the dollhouse, and now she's building a dollhouse in heaven. And people are so gullible, they will just believe all of this and will not reflect upon it and will not do critical thinking about it. Now, this is not the way that an authentic medium operates. The authentic medium really doesn't do much talking once the spirit comes into the picture and once the loved one makes an appearance. And I think that people really do need a little bit of education if they're going to visit a medium, to separate out the people who are very, very high quality, the people who are very, very low quality, so low it's really just a waste of money to spend time on it. And you're right, in our book, The Mysterious Minds, we do give examples of this, and we do tell stories about people who have been very satisfied with their work with mediums and people who have been ripped off. So, it takes all kinds. It really does.
Exactly. And another caller sent us an email asking about the fact that we have in Spiritism one framework on mediumship in which we don't do this ostensible public display of mediumship because of the conditions. In America and in other places where they are not under the framework of Spiritism, it's very public. Would you say that in your research there are considerations to the reasons why it would be preferable not to be that publicly displayed?
Many mediums I know are very modest, and they have a low profile, and they do not seek a lot of public attention. And I'll tell you what they explain to me. Once you get public attention, people expect you to do things which you're not capable of doing. They expect you to make contact with the spirit 24 hours a day, day and night. No, it's not that simple. Sometimes you have to take a rest of a couple of days, even a couple of weeks or a couple of months before you're ready again. It's not something you can turn on and turn off mechanically. Just is not that simple. So by not going public, they believe that they're able to do better work and more authentic work. Some of the mediums who have gone public do get caught up, especially on television, when they come up with the wrong answer and where the information is not correct, and then people start to doubt them and lose faith in them. And then I hate to say it, if a medium thinks that he or she has to be correct all the time, it's very easy to resort to cold reading or a lot of other pieces of trick and chicanery. And again, not necessarily because they're bad people, it's just to preserve their image and so that people will not lose faith in them. And that's not really the type of thinking that should be going through a medium's mind at all. A medium shouldn't always be on the defensive. A medium shouldn't worry about reputation or about the face they present in public.
So, Dr. Krippner, there is a person who sent us another email. Her name is Chris Walney, and she asks this question. Have you observed in your studies if it makes any difference to mediums who do it free of charge versus those who charge for their mediumship?
This is a very, very good question. And mediums will differ on this. I think that in terms of the quality of the work, if they're doing it free of charge, they don't have anything to prove. They don't have a reputation to keep up. And they would have the edge over a medium, even a very sincere medium, who feels that to gain a client's trust and give a client what the client is paying money for, that they have to produce. And this is unavoidable, but it's not the best frame of mind for a medium to go into a seance or a sitting with.
Exactly. Kardec mentions often, and especially in item 341 of the Medium's book, when he says the conditions to facilitate the presence of good spirits and refrain the bad spirits from staying at these meetings, he says it's selflessness and disinterestedness. So in that regard, free mediumship is of the essence. So would you say then that amongst good mediums, having zero personal interest, especially in regard to finances, would be crucial to make sure that the product of your mediumship is pure?
Oh, I think that the more authentic readings probably come from the mediums who have this disinterestedness, as you say. Now, in English, that's a very tricky word. Being disinterested doesn't mean that you're not interested in the welfare of your client. Far from it. It means that you are not attached to the outcome. you're doing the best that you can, and you sort of let the chips fall where they may. And the client will be the judge of how useful that information is. So not having a personal stake in the outcome really leads to a much better quality of service. Once again, Allan Kardec was correct in that assessment, like he was on so many things.
And Dr. Krippner, we have another listener from Ohio, Paul Franklin, and he is asking us this question about if you have observed in your studies of mediumship whether or not the exercise of mediumship can produce any form of mental illness.
Yes, that's a very important question. I think if the medium is not prepared well, if the medium has not had a good teacher, has not read Allan Kardec's books, for example, enters into it in a very naive way, the outcome might be very negative. I mean, what happens if they start to pick up information from a malevolent entity, one of these very low spirits that can attach on to a naive medium? And mediums who have gone through proper training, who know what they're doing, know how to defend themselves, know how to avoid this. But very naive mediums can sometimes get themselves into a lot of trouble, and they can certainly develop mental illness from the inappropriate use of this particular talent.
Now, Dr. Krippner, when we talk about alignment, and you said as a preparation, Allan Kardec was living at a very tricky time regarding religion versus science and philosophy at the time, and he was very skillful. He didn't hesitate in this investigation about spirit phenomena to at one point conclude that the best alignment for mediums would be to adopt a Christ-conscious attitude in life. In your investigation, have you observed anything that would vouch for this proposal?
Well, of course, Allan Kardec was a creature of his time, his era, and his country were virtually everybody that he came in contact with was Christian in terms of their religious affiliation. And I think that his statement is a good one because if you're a Christian, use Christ as your model. But, you know, I've been around the world and I've run into Buddhist mediums and Hindu mediums and even Jewish mediums and Muslim mediums. And pagan mediums also, who are not members of any of the mainstream churches or religions that we commonly know about. So mediums come in all varieties of faiths and spiritual disciplines and even religions. But if they aspire to the highest ideals of their faith, they all sort of end up in the same place.
So you were talking about what Kardec mentioned, and it reminds me just now of the introduction of the Gospel According to Spiritism when he says the universal characteristics of these teachings that he was sharing. So you would say there is a universality that would permeate all different philosophies and religions that would intersect in this, we could name it God consciousness and Christ consciousness. It's beyond just the Christian mindset, right?
Oh, yes, very definitely. And you're right, it's more universal. The more you study this, the more commonalities you find in terms of people who are very highly evolved spiritually, whether they're mediums or whether they're something else.
As we talk about your observations of mediumship and its practice around the world, specifically when you observed mediumship under the framework of Spiritism, what impressed you the most in that regard?
Well, we were just talking about the universality of the high qualities and the spiritual level of mediums, and I was working with a medium in Brazil, and this medium was one of these mediums who uses the radio as an instrument. And 1 tap means yes, 2 taps means no, and 3 taps means I don't understand your question. So one of the people in the group asked what I thought was a very stupid question, and asked, which religion is the true religion? And so we said Christianity, tap. Judaism, tap. Buddhism, tap. Hinduism, tap. Spiritism, tap. Right down the list. Yes for all of them. Well, we thought that had made its point, but then this stubborn person said, well, yes, but there must be one religion which is the truest religion of all. And so we started again. Christianity, tap, tap, no. Judaism, tap, tap, no. Buddhism, tap, tap. Hinduism, tap, tap. Islam, tap, tap. And then I threw in, how about the Unitarians? Tap. And so the Unitarian Church, which was a very, very small denomination, got nominated as the one which was the purest religion of them all. And my Unitarian friends laugh when they hear this verdict. So I said, well, it just shows that the spirits were having fun, that they have a sense of humor, especially when they get stupid questions.
Oh, well, what can we say about that? So when you talk about mediumship under the frame of spiritism, does it surprise you that after 150 years of the publishing of the Spirit's book, Kardec was at his time communicating through letters with different people around the world and also in America, as he reported? And what are the reasons why we don't have it as a more spread out practice under the Spiritist framework in the United States? What is your take in that regard?
I think that one reason is that in the United States, mediumship really started with the Fox sisters in Hydesville, New York, and it became known as spiritualism. This was also in the 1800s.
Mm-hmm.
But then this became very controversial because one of the Fox sisters became an alcoholic, and she said that everything they were doing was because of tricks, and then the other sisters disagreed with her. And today there is a spiritualist church in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Kardec sort of dissociated himself from that, and that's why he invented the word spiritism, as it's called in English,
mm-hmm.
to distinguish himself from the spiritualist church in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
And so many people in the United States have heard of the spiritualist churches, and of course they've come a long way since the notorious Fox sisters, about which there is still considerable dispute. And I think that there's probably some confusion. They hear about Kardec and Spiritism, and they think it's the same thing. This is why in Brazil, often the Portuguese word is used, kardecismo,
mm-hmm.
kardecism, to differentiate it from other types of spiritualism, even though he preferred the word spiritism, and members of his group in Brazil really prefer the word spiritism,
mm-hmm.
but sometimes to differentiate, they use Kardec's name itself.
Mm-hmm.
However, let's face it, there's more interest in Kardec now in the United States than there has been at any other time that I remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that educational work like what you are doing with this radio show and the Kardec centers around the United States, and now this new book out about Kardec,
mm-hmm.
are going to be helpful. And also, as you know, there has been a new movie based on a book that Chico Xavier
mm-hmm.
Got from one of his spirits. Very
mm-hmm.
good movie in Brazil. Maybe this will be coming out in an English language version with subtitles, and that'll introduce people more to the topic.
Were you able to watch that movie?
I have not seen it yet. I'd love to see it. I've heard so much about it.
All right, we'll send it to you. You know why? Because we got a good collaboration with Strand Releasing, who is bringing this to us December 6th in the United States in DVD form. And we're going to send one to you because I think you're going to love it. And we'd love to hear from you probably in a future show. What's your take about that as well?
Well, thank you. You have my address at Saybrook University.
All right, we will. Now, there is one ultimate question. As you merged very well in your book the neurobiology of mediums in general, the discussion about the topic, Kardec mentions very clearly in the Medium's book that mediumship is an organic faculty. What do you think about that?
Well,
that it would even pass from a member to member of a family, meaning it has a hereditary component to it.
I think it is hereditary. You have to have a certain type of brain and body to be an effective medium, and I think this is something that has a genetic component. So again, Allan Kardec was way ahead of his time in observing that, even before we knew as much as we know today about brains and genes and neurobiology.
So what would you say that is the frontier on the study of mediumship now?
Well, on this last point, I think that mediums have the ability to go back and forth between the hemispheres of the brain and to come up with a unified consciousness. They're also well rooted in their body. They take good care of their health because mediumship is a very, very strenuous exercise and discipline. And if they don't take good care of their bodies, they can actually get physically sick from all of this work that they do. And so they need to have strong grounding in health. They have to allow time for recreation, for relaxation, for play. They really need to take care of this very, very precious gift if they are going to continue with it.
Dr. Krippner, as we need to wrap up the show, would like to extend you an invitation, special one. Next year, we're going to put together a show about post-traumatic stress disorder in war veterans, because especially in the United States, it's something that we need to reach out and bring a spiritual perspective to it. And I know you have co-authored a book that is entitled Haunted by Combat. Would you be willing to come back?
Yes, I'll certainly do my best. Haunted by Combat is about post-traumatic stress disorder, not only for Army veterans, but by other people who have been wounded by trauma. And many of these people have found great comfort in going to mediums, and the mediums have actually been able to be of help to them.
Exactly, because Kardec talks about it in the third part of the Spirits book. He asks questions to the spirits of the time about what is happening at wartime, at combat, and they explain quite clearly that the spirits of those who die can be around those who are still in combat and excite more and more and more and follow them. And I'll never forget, at the Spirit Society of Baltimore many years ago, doing this spiritual counseling, and we've seen the entity that came with the wife of one of the veterans who were experiencing a very traumatic time in their marriage because of their coming back from Afghanistan, and the spirit that was coming after them in revenge.
Oh, yes, I've heard of similar cases, absolutely.
So, Dr. Krippner, our listeners, they have been willing to listen from you, and we recommend all of your books, especially this one, Mysterious Minds, that would go hand in hand with many observations that Kardec made at his time, not only in the Medium's book, but mostly in the Medium's book as well. We would ask you, what would be your final comments for the show today to our listeners at Kardec Radio?
Well, I think that there are more things on earth, as Shakespeare said, than are dreamed about in our philosophies. So I would urge people to be open-minded, broad-minded, and to take a close look at what Allan Kardec and his followers have been saying and doing, and you will find out that Kardec was way ahead of his time in many, many respects.
Dr. Krippner, we are truly honored to having had you here at Kardec Radio, and very grateful for all the pioneering work you have done with so much elegance and refinement, and we wish you the very best in your missionary work in science and the science of the mind. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, and the same to you.
Thank you. So, dear listener, here we have it for you, nourishing your soul. Are you surprised? No, you're not, because you see, Kardec Radio is here to share with you the very best. And Dr. Krippner was here with us sharing some, because he has lots to share. Go read his books. Go to his website, and you will see. Go to KardecRadio.com, read more about Dr. Krippner. Go to his website and see the many achievements. He has been here on Earth with us to share lots of great news about the human mind. We are more, as he said, than our eyes can see. So to always finish this program in the highest tone, because as we nourish our soul, we need also to reach out to the minds that are in need of enlightenment and nourishment, and we are as well. So in the Gospel According to Spiritism, Kardec teaches us about a beautiful way of aligning ourselves when we are practicing mediumship. You know, prayer is always a way to log in the account of these great minds of the illuminated spirits of the beyond and refrain those who are earthbound to coming to us and blocking our way. So in the chapter 28 of the Gospel According to Spiritism, there is a session, items 8, 9 to 10, prayer for mediums. As Kardec says, mediums are the interpreters in charge of transmitting the spirit teachings to humans, or rather, they are the material instruments through which the spirits express themselves in order to become intelligible to humankind. Their mission is holy because its aim is to open up the horizons of life eternal. And as such, praying is a good way, as he says, to align ourselves. So, if you are a medium at some point, already ostensible, because mediumship has many levels, let us learn this prayer. It's a prayer to align ourselves, and we pray in this way. Item 10 of chapter 28. Almighty God, allow good spirits to assist us in the communication that we are asking for. Keep from us the presumption of thinking that I'm safe from ignorant spirits, from the pride that may deceive us regarding the worth of what we obtain, and keep us from all sentiments contrary to true charity with respect to other mediums. And if we are induced to error, inspire someone with the thought to warn us, and inspire us with the humility to accept and acknowledge criticism, and to take for ourselves, not for others, the counsels that good spirits wish to dictate to us. And if we have been tempted to abuse in any way whatsoever the faculty that it pleased you to have granted us, or to flatter ourselves for it, we ask that you take it away, rather than allow it to be diverted from its providential purpose, which is the good of all and our own moral advancement. Dear listener, Kardec, as a great researcher and educator, is bringing here to us safe education, very productive ways of using mediumship, because mediumship has come for a very important, useful purpose in humankind. So let us now send a big hug of gratitude to Dr. Krippner for having had the honor of having him here in the show, and for the great work he has done for humankind. And dear listener, to continue in this beautiful December of 2011, we're going to continue in this conversations about science and spiritism, knowing the good news that lie ahead of us. So in a week, we come back here for more. We're going to talk about your brain on religious experience. It's about neurotheology, the principles of neurotheology as published in the book by Dr. Andrew Newberg. He's going to be here with us in a week to discuss this fascinating view of the human mind, our brain, and how it's activated whenever we feel deeply religiously connected. And may God bless us always.
Thank you for listening to Kardec Radio. broadcasting live every Saturday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Email us and share your comments at www.kardecradio.com. Until next time, we wish you many blessings.